I was always there for my grandpa. But when the inheritance was at stake, my own family tried to erase me to get it all. Have you ever been betrayed by your own blood? Felt like no matter how much you gave, how much you sacrificed, you were suddenly erased from the picture. That's exactly what happened to me. The one who stood by my grandfather through thick and thin, the one who carried the weight of his world, was the one they decided to push aside. My name is Alex. Growing up, my grandfather wasn't just family, he was my everything. When my parents disappeared from my life, it was him who picked me up, who raised me with stories of strength, loyalty, and honor. Every scar on his hands told a story of hard work, and every smile held the weight of 1,000 memories. I became his shadow, fixing the creaking roof, managing his appointments, making sure he never felt alone. I never asked for anything in return. It was never about money or inheritance. It was about family, about respect. But respect, as I learned, is often just a word. One chilly autumn afternoon, as I was finishing up repairs on the old fence, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer immediately. On the other end was a cold voice I barely recognized. A lawyer representing the estate. He told me the will was being contested, that my uncle and cousins were trying to alter it, claiming I hadn't been involved enough in Grandpa's life to merit a share. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. After years of being there, of sacrificing, of giving up my own time and dreams, I was suddenly not involved enough. I sat on the porch steps, phone slipping from my hand, heart pounding in disbelief. How could they do this? How could they ignore everything? The late-night calls, the hospital visits, the empty dinners I skipped just to be by his side? That's when I realized something terrifying. Family isn't always what you think it is. Sometimes, it's just a battlefield disguised as love. But I wasn't ready to back down. Not now. Not ever. Because sometimes the only way to protect what's yours is to fight fire with fire. After that call, everything changed. Suddenly, the family gatherings I once looked forward to became cold battlegrounds. The smiles were sharper, the words quieter but loaded with meaning. I saw the way my uncle avoided my eyes, how my cousins whispered when I entered the room. It was like I was a ghost, present, but invisible. I kept replaying memories in my head. The countless times I put my life on hold to help Grandpa. The nights I stayed awake with him when his health took a turn for the worse. The afternoons we spent fixing that old creaky porch, laughing about stories from his youth. And yet, to them, I was just an obstacle, someone to be removed quietly so they could get a bigger piece of the pie. One evening, I decided to confront my uncle. I knew the conversation wouldn't be easy, but I needed answers. I needed to hear from his own mouth why they were trying to erase me. We met at a quiet diner far from prying ears. The air between us was thick with tension. "I don't understand," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "After everything I've done, why would you do this? Why try to cut me out?" He looked at me with a cold smile. "Alex, this is business. Family or not, money is money. Grandpa left a fortune, and we all deserve our share. You haven't been here like the rest of us. You can't expect to just take what you want." His words felt like knives twisting inside me. How could he reduce years of care, sacrifice, and love to business? How could he so easily dismiss the bond one thought we shared? But I didn't back down. I was here when it mattered. When you were too busy living your lives, I was the one helping him. You want to call it business? Fine. But don't pretend I'm the villain. He leaned back, eyes narrowing. You don't know what you're getting into. That night, I left the diner with a knot in my stomach and a fire burning in my chest. I realized this battle would be harder than I thought. It wasn't just about money, it was about respect, justice, and the family I thought I knew being nothing but a facade. And I wasn't going to lose without a fight. After that meeting, I started seeing my family through a different lens. It wasn't just petty rivalry anymore. There was something darker lurking beneath, a shadow hiding long-buried secrets. I remember one evening, when I was visiting Grandpa, overhearing a whispered conversation just outside his study door. The voices were low, but the words cut through the silence. "If Alex finds out the truth, he'll ruin everything," whispered one of my cousins. "We need to act fast. Otherwise, it's all going to fall apart," replied another. My heart sank with suspicion. What was the secret they were so desperate to hide? And why did it matter so much that they were willing to destroy me to keep it buried? The following days, I threw myself into searching for answers. Remembering Grandpa's words, "Do good, but be ready to fight," I started my own investigation. With every step, it became clearer. The inheritance was more than just money and property. It was wrapped in old grudges, hidden truths, and perhaps the very reasons why they wanted me erased. One day, I stumbled upon a set of old letters, tucked away in a secret compartment in Grandpa's desk. They spoke of injustice, betrayal by family, and even deals no one was supposed to know about. Those letters changed everything. Now I knew this battle wasn't just about money. It was about truth, legacy, and justice, things long buried beneath the facade of family harmony, and I was ready to see it through to the end. With those letters clutched tightly in my hands, I felt like I'd uncovered a map, a roadmap to the real story behind everything. But the more I read, the more tangled the web seemed. Grandpa wrote about disputes decades ago, about bitter fights over land and money that split the family apart. He spoke of promises broken and alliances forged in shadows. Most shocking of all was a mention of a secret deal, one that, if revealed, could change everything about the inheritance. I knew I needed allies, but who could I trust? The family was divided. Some cousins acted friendly, but their smiles felt forced. My uncle's coldness was a warning. So I turned to an old family friend, Mrs. Reynolds, a woman who'd known Grandpa since childhood. Over coffee, I showed her the letters. Her face paled. This is serious," she said quietly. "Your grandfather wanted to protect you. He feared what might happen if the truth came out." Her words gave me strength. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a fight to protect my grandfather's legacy from being twisted and stolen by those blinded by greed. But I also knew I was stepping into dangerous territory. Someone was watching, someone who didn't want me digging any deeper. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Stop now, or you'll regret it." The war was no longer just about inheritance. It had turned personal, and I was ready for whatever came next. That anonymous message left no doubt. I had crossed a line, and now my life was in danger. But backing down was impossible. Every day, it became clearer that silence would mean betraying myself and Grandpa. The next morning, when I arrived at Grandpa's house, I noticed his study door was slightly ajar. Inside, empty. On the desk lay a single note. "I know what you're digging into, and it's dangerous. Stop before it's too late. Those watching." My hand trembled as I picked up the paper. Grandma, seeing the worry on my face, squeezed my hand tightly and whispered, "They fear the truth, Alex, but you have to keep going." I realized this fight wasn't just about money. It was about my dignity, Grandpa's memory, and proving that true family doesn't abandon each other in the darkest times. The following days were filled with fear and caution. Every phone call, every knock at the door felt like a threat. I knew my enemies were close, but one thought burned deep inside me. They could threaten and intimidate me, but they would never break me. Feeling the walls closing in, I knew I needed someone on the inside, someone who could help me navigate the twisted maze of family lies and legal battles. But who could I trust? Everyone seemed to have their own agenda. Then, unexpectedly, I got a call from my cousin, Sarah. The same cousin who had been quiet during family gatherings, always lurking in the shadows. Her voice was hesitant, but there was urgency beneath it. "Alex, I know what they're doing. I don't agree with it. I want to help." I was shocked. Sarah had always been distant, caught up in her own world. But maybe, just maybe, she felt the same betrayal I did. We met in a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. She handed me an envelope filled with documents, emails, receipts, even recordings. Proof of my uncle's shady dealings to manipulate the will and silence anyone who stood in their way. "I've been scared," she admitted. "But Grandpa's memory deserves justice. I can't stand by and watch this happen." Her words reignited my hope. Finally, I had an ally, someone willing to fight the corruption from within. But I also knew this was just the beginning. Together, we would expose their lies. But the deeper we dug, the more dangerous things would become. Because when family turns against you, sometimes the enemy wears your face. With Sarah's evidence in hand, I felt a surge of determination. For the first time, I wasn't alone in this fight. But I also knew that digging deeper meant stirring up things some wanted buried forever. We spent nights going through files, cross-referencing names, dates, and transactions. Patterns emerged: hidden accounts, forged signatures, payments to shadowy figures. My uncle wasn't just trying to cut me out. He was orchestrating a full-scale takeover of Grandpa's legacy. But every step closer to the truth brought more threats. One evening, as I locked up the house, a dark car slowed beside me. The windows were tinted, the engine barely audible. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then the car sped away. I reported it to the police, but they said without proof, there was little they could do. I had to rely on my own instincts and Sarah's support to stay ahead. Despite the fear, I pressed on. Grandpa had trusted me with this legacy, and I refused to let his memory be tarnished. Little did I know, the most dangerous revelation was still waiting. One that would shake the very foundation of our family. Late one night, as Sarah and I sifted through yet another batch of documents, we stumbled upon something that stopped us cold. Hidden deep within a folder marked "Confidential" was a faded, handwritten letter. A letter from Grandpa himself. The words inside were unlike anything we had seen before. He confessed to a secret. A trust fund set aside specifically for me, meant to protect me from greedy relatives. But the letter also hinted at a betrayal. Someone close to him had been tampering with the estate, hiding assets, and trying to erase my name from the will entirely. Our eyes met in disbelief. This wasn't just a family feud over money anymore. It was a deliberate, calculated attempt to steal everything that was rightfully mine. The gravity of the situation hit me hard. The people I trusted, the people I called family, had been working against me all along. Yet, Grandpa's letter was proof that he had seen it coming, and he had prepared for it. But how deep did this betrayal go? And could I outsmart those who had been playing this game far longer than I ever imagined? The fight was no longer just about reclaiming my inheritance. It was about exposing the lies, the manipulation, and the cold-hearted greed that threatened to destroy everything I held dear. And I wasn't going to let them win. The discovery of Grandpa's letter changed everything. Now, armed with undeniable proof of my rightful claim, Sarah and I prepared to confront the family and the legal battle ahead. But this wasn't just a courtroom fight. It was a silent war where words were weapons and alliances shifted like sand. At the next family gathering, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. I could feel the cold stares and hear the quiet whispers. They knew I had evidence, but none dared speak openly. My uncle approached me with a forced smile. "Alex, maybe we can settle this quietly. No need to drag the family's name through the mud." I met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not here to settle. I'm here for the truth." That night, Sarah and I drafted a plan to expose the corruption piece by piece. We reached out to a lawyer known for taking on powerful families like mine, a man with a reputation for being relentless. As we prepared to move forward, the pressure mounted. Phone calls from unknown numbers. Cars parked outside the house late at night. The war had begun, but I refused to back down. In this silent war, every move counted, and I was determined to win. As the legal battle loomed, the family's true colors began to show. Not everyone was content to stay in the shadows. Whispers of doubt and fear started creeping through the relatives. Some distanced themselves, others tried to sway me with promises, but I saw through their facades. One afternoon, I received a call from my Aunt Linda, the one I'd always considered neutral, even kind. "Alex," she said hesitantly, "there's something you need to know. This whole thing, it's bigger than you think." Curiosity piqued. I met her at a quiet park. She revealed a long-held secret. Years ago, Grandpa had made a deal with a distant relative, a deal that might complicate the inheritance far beyond what we'd imagined. "There are other claims," she warned, "and some of those involved aren't as friendly as they seem." I realized that this fight was no longer just about greed within my immediate family. It was a tangled web spanning years, filled with hidden agendas and unexpected alliances. But rather than scare me off, her revelation only fueled my resolve. If this war was going to be long and brutal, I was ready to face it head-on, no matter the cost. The deeper I dug, the more complicated things became. Aunt Linda's revelation opened a door I hadn't expected. There were more players involved, distant cousins, old family friends, even strangers with vague connections to Grandpa's past. Each had their own claim, their own motives. But amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. My uncle was no longer the only enemy. This inheritance fight was turning into a battlefield, with loyalties shifting and alliances breaking. Meanwhile, pressure from the threats didn't stop. Strange cars continued to appear near my house. Anonymous calls grew more frequent and aggressive. I had to be careful, not just legally but physically. One night, after late hours at the lawyer's office, I found a note slipped under my door. Back off or else. It was a chilling reminder. This wasn't just about money. It was about power, control, and breaking me down piece by piece. But with Sarah by my side, and the growing evidence against them, I refused to be intimidated. I was ready to expose every dirty secret and take back what was mine, no matter how high the stakes. The threats and pressure only intensified, but so did my determination. To fight effectively, I needed to understand the roots of this family feud. So Sarah and I began digging into Grandpa's past. We discovered old photographs, faded documents, and stories from people who'd known him long ago. Each piece painted a picture of a man who tried to keep peace, but who had many enemies. Some from within the family, others from outside. One revelation hit me harder than the rest. Grandpa had once confronted a scheme to seize his fortune through forged documents and false testimonies. He'd fought it fiercely but never fully exposed the culprits. It was clear that the battle I faced was not new. It was decades in the making. This knowledge gave me a new perspective. I wasn't just fighting greedy relatives. I was standing against a legacy of deceit that had haunted my family for generations. And with that, I realized the war wasn't just about inheritance. It was about reclaiming the family's honor. The more we uncovered about Grandpa's past, the more I realized how dangerous this all was. One evening, as I was leaving Sarah's place after reviewing some documents, I noticed a car slowly following me. The driver's face was hidden behind dark sunglasses. Even though it was nighttime, my heart pounded. I took a few quick turns, trying to lose them, but the car stayed close. Finally, I pulled into a busy gas station, hoping the lights and crowds would deter whoever was tailing me. I called Sarah and told her what happened. She urged me to be extra careful and offered to stay at my place for the next few nights. That close call was a wake-up call. This was no longer just a legal battle. It was a fight for my safety. But I refused to be scared into silence. I had come too far to back down now. With the threats intensifying and danger lurking around every corner, I knew I needed to shift tactics. Sarah and I decided to go public, not with the full details but enough to send a clear message. We reached out to a trusted journalist known for exposing family scandals, hoping to shine a light on the corruption and force the guilty to back down. The story hit the headlines, and suddenly, everything changed. Relatives who had been silent began calling, some apologizing, others threatening legal action. But the public attention gave me an edge. No one wanted to be exposed as the villain. For the first time in months, I felt the tide turning. The power I thought they held was slipping. But this was far from over, because in the shadows, plans were still being made. And I could feel a storm brewing, one that would either break me or finally bring justice. The public exposure forced my enemies to retreat from the shadows, but the fight was far from over. Legal battles ensued, meetings dragged on, and every step forward felt like walking through a minefield. But I refused to be defeated. Sarah stood by me every moment, our bond stronger than ever as we faced the lies and threats together. Grandpa's legacy was no longer just a symbol of family wealth. It had become a testament to resilience and truth. Finally, after months of turmoil, the court ruled in my favor. The trust fund, the rightful inheritance, all restored to me. But more importantly, I reclaimed my family's honor. As I held the final papers, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This victory wasn't just mine. It was for Grandpa, for my grandmother, and for anyone who's ever been betrayed by those closest to them. And though the scars remain, I know that standing up for what's right is the only way to truly heal. The war had ended, but the story would live on.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the story, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. If you have any thoughts about what happened, feel free to share them in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Stay safe, stay curious, and see you in the next one.